everyone! Yay! So I'm gonna do a sampler for you guys. So I know a lot of samplers are kind of, boring. Hopefully this one's a little more fun. Um, so if you go ahead and add it to your cart, it costs $0. I'm not sure how much of a checkout process you're gonna have to do. Hopefully it's not too painful, but you'll be able to download the image that you can then print. And then you can just follow along with me. So I'm going to do it in a 5-inch hoop. And this is for you guys who've been meaning to try this, so hopefully it's easy to follow along. If you have any questions, just ask, and I'll do my best to answer them. I am self-trained. I am not classically trained in anything. This is all just stuff that I have found on the internet. So the information's there for you. This tip guide that I came up with for my my designs, this is included with every design. It's just all stuff that I've learned on the internet. So there's no secrets in here. It's all out there. Okay, so your hoop, you're going to unscrew it so you can pop the two pieces apart. You got the top and the bottom. Put your bottom down. I'm just using a random chunk of fabric. You can see it's not pretty, it's not ironed, doesn't matter. I'm just gonna stick it here. And this is just cotton, so if you go to the your local fabric store, just ask where the cotton is, like for quilting. It's pretty much the biggest section at the fabric store, and a very small section of it is going to be the solids, which is just the solid colors. You're free, of course, to embroider on crazy patterns, but of course it's going to be easier to see what you're stitching on just kind of a plain color, plain patterned fabric. So, okay. So I tightened up my screw. To get this super tight, what I do is I kind of work around like this, pinching and pulling all the way around. And you can see all my creases are gone now, so it would have been a waste of my time to get out the dang iron. Okay, and then I'll tighten this again. Super tight. Okay, and part of the reason is, it's going to be easier to stitch through. You're not going to have any warping of your stitches, where if you have your stitches too tight and your fabric too loose, you're going to get puckering of your fabric. You don't want that. And also, this is going to make it easier to draw on the design. So I like to use like the water-soluble pens, but for this little tutorial, I wanted to just use stuff that I figured you guys probably already had around the house if you're a beginner. So what I like to do is just cut out my design. You don't have to do it this way. If you want to just leave your design not cut out, you can always trace this way. But what I'm going to do is stick my design on the back here and trace it on the front. That way I can get a little bit of light behind it. So it's a little easier to see. And I'm going to use just a piece of like tape. Like, you don't need anything fancy, you know what I mean? It's what I'm trying to tell you. I've bought a bunch of fancy stuff, and a lot of it you don't need. So, here you go. So I'm going to use a pen, because I find the pencil is like too sharp, like I'll puncture the fabric or something. I don't want to embroider with pencil lead. So I'm just going to trace. And since this is a permanent tracing method, this pen's not going anywhere, I want to be careful because I'm going to have to stitch exactly over these lines to cover them. So go as slow as you need to. I'm being quiet because I'm concentrating. Plus, I don't want to start rambling. Find I'm a nervous talker. So there's going to definitely be moments of silence. And that's why I like embroidery. It's a meditation, like me, like a lot of people, we get anxious, you know, and for me, it's just so nice to quiet my mind, quiet my hands, quiet my heart with some embroidery. Okay, so for here, how do I want to do this? I'm just going to put little dots at the ends of the loopy stitches. And then I know I'm going to have lines in between. I'm not going to even mark that on there. You'll see. We'll see. So this is what we're making, right? Ta-da! So I'm a little nervous because you can kind of change how thick these loopy stitches are. These are called detached chain stitch. So I want to make sure that I don't have any guidelines that show through. That's why I'm just doing a little dot at the end. Excuse me, guys. I'm having like some allergies. Okay, we're done with this. Done. All right, so here's a situation with the floss. We're done with the pencils. Let's see, I think we're done with the scissors. Okay, so I'm going to start with, what am I going to start with? Let's start with backstitch because that's the easiest, I think, of the stitches, and also my favorite. Here's a little diagram. There's better diagrams online. And you know, I've said it in other videos before that, like, I have followed the diagrams and totally come up with new stitches. I think it's, you know, it's hard to, gosh, it's like with crochet. I don't know if you guys do any crocheting or knitting, but those diagrams always confuse the heck out of me. So that's why I'm doing the videos, you know. I get a lot more visually out of videos than I do out of the diagrams. So if you're like me, then this is for you. Okay, so when you first start, you're gonna want to have a little tail here, right? The first one's the hardest because there's nothing to attach it to. So what I do is I just kind of hold my finger here, and then we're gonna start stitching. So the first stitch is kind of just random. I mean, it's not random, but the direction, I'm not sure it matters so much. So I'm using, what is this color? 152. It's this lighter pink that's going to be in backstitch. So I'm just going to follow on along the line. You want your stitches to be pretty evenly spaced. They don't have to be. You can do some fun stuff and change the length of your stitches. But when you go around corners, when you do curves, you're definitely going to want your stitches smaller, right? Because you're working with a series of straight lines. So the smaller they are, the curvier you can get. So at backstitch, you're going to pretty much go ahead of your line and then go back. Backstitch, ta-da! It's pretty simple. You're just kind of working along here. So before I get too far, I kind of forgot about my anchoring. So I'm going to do, let's turn this around so you can see what I'm doing back here. And while I'm here, I'm going to encourage my little tail to get anchored down. You just see what I did there? Oops. There we go. See? So I'm starting to get this anchored with my stitches. So it's a little extra to think about when you're doing your first stitches. Oops, keep getting a little tangle here with my tail. And what else? I mean, when I cut this thread, I don't know if you saw how much I cut, but it was, you know, enough. Here I'm anchoring some more. Basically just weaving this as I go in and out to make sure it's sturdy. And you know, with something like this, we're probably not gonna, I mean, you technically could put this on a shirt or on a patch, in which case you want to pay more attention to your anchoring. For me, it's on a random piece of fabric. It's just for fun. It's just for exercise. So I don't think anyone's going to come around and start picking out my stitches. So I think think we'll be fine. I'll just pull it back through here one more time. Okay, excellent. So I'm just going to keep going around. So what I was saying about the length of my thread. Oops. It's hard to talk and concentrate at the same time. Okay. So like 18 inches, 2 feet. You don't want it too long or it's going to be more prone to tangles. If it's too short, you're going to be changing, you're going to need a lot more pieces of thread, which is kind of a pain, right? To have to stop and rethread. So there's a happy medium. And you can see that as I go, see I have my tail here, I kind of have to pull so that I don't end up stitching with 2 layers of thread, two strands. Hopefully that makes sense. I'm really surprised. I have my cat in the room and she's being very well behaved. I was afraid she'd want to join in a little bit. She really thinks that this is her stitching studio. It's not, it's mine, but we argue about it. She bites me every time I take her out of here. I like to have the door closed at night because I don't know what she's going to do in here in the middle of the night, take out all the thread and make a big tangled thread ball. But she puts up a fight every night, When I'm coming up through the back, I do this little searching thing with my needle so you can make sure you're coming up on your line there. I like to use this stitch for lettering. It's probably the simplest way to do lettering. Like I said, you need to do the stitches probably shorter than what I'm doing here. And I find that the easiest lettering to do for a beginner is going to be the most simple lettering. I know that's not very much fun, but once you get all those curvy lines, it's just really going to complicate what you're trying to say with your letters. So, very, very simple, straight lines, just for practice at first, before you get into the fancy stuff. All right, we're almost back around. Yay. See here I have like an in-between size stitch. I'm gonna do 2. It probably doesn't matter because that rose it's probably gonna cover a lot of this. There we go. Ta-da. All right, and so then I'm gonna see how nice this got all anchored back in here. So then I'm gonna do the same thing here. Just kind of weave it in, and snip it. We'll snip this while we're here. Not that it's that long, but it just starts with one little tail, and next thing you know, see, how did I do here? Yeah, not too bad. Okay, what's next? We'll do split stitch. So here's the little thing on split stitch. Basically, you're splitting the stitch. You come up through your previous stitch and kind of split it in half. I like it. It gives a little more texture. So when you're threading your needle, I do the lick method. If you moisten the end of your thread here, it's a little easier to get through. And also, if the eye of your needle is too small, it's too small. You need a needle with a bigger eye. So when you're using 6 strands of thread, you can use a big fatty needle like this. Okay. So I'm going to anchor. So this one's easier, right? Because I've got something to anchor on. And I don't know, I do it different every time. As long as it's not going anywhere, it's good. You don't, they say not to do a knot because that'll add weight. And depending on how complicated your piece is, like it could get really weighed down with all those knots, so you don't want to do that. Okay, so I just started with a little simple stitch, and I'm going to come up through the middle. See, I'm splitting the stitch. Oh my gosh, this is all fuzzy. There we go. Hopefully you were able to see. I'm having a problem with my autofocus on this camera. Hopefully the entire last section was not fuzzy. How embarrassing. Okay. So I went up through the stitch here. I split the stitch, and then I'm just gonna go down a little further down my guideline there and do the same thing. Splitting the stitch. And this looks nicer if, you know, the more even your stitches are, evenly spaced. So kind of like the back stitch, you want to keep them kind of small. And just take your time. That's what embroidery is about, just taking your time. Oops, sorry. I can't remember the last time I watched a movie with my husband and I didn't embroider. I always have a little piece I'm working out by the couch. I use shoebox lids for my projects. There's, you know, just little trays, and I have all my thread, a pair of scissors, an extra needle, just a little mobile embroidery kit. And then when I'm on the go, I just dump it all into a big Ziploc. I like cute bags, but I want to be able to see what's in there from the outside, you know. Uh-oh. So these knots happen all the time. Sometimes you can just slide them out, and sometimes you can't. I can't figure it out. I'm sure someone out there knows. Let's see. Yeah. Okay, guys, I cheated and I cut that knot out off screen, and I added more split stitch, and you can see I'm actually out of thread. And it's always like this, right? I only have like 5 more stitches left, and I just, dang it, don't have enough thread to do it. So I did want to show you what that looks like. So I'm going to anchor and cry a little bit on the inside. And then, because now I have to use another piece of string. For 5 stinking stitches. That's okay. If that's my biggest problem today, I think I'm way ahead. Alright. Anchor in again. See, you can see it's getting kind of crazy back here, right? So the sooner you start grooming your... Oh God. I was going to say the sooner you start grooming your back sides. Oh heavens. But yeah, that's what I'm saying. Keep it clean, folks. Alright. So piercing the previous stitch and moving forward down your line. Oops, what have I done? When you get a clog or snag like that, I just kind of tease it out. Basically, it's my tail getting tangled up as I pull through. So, all right, talking about tails and backside. This is crazy. Okay. Add another stitch here because I don't like how that looks kind of harsh there. Okay. All right. I'm going to anchor. Just tack that down. And snap. I know you guys can't see that. It's too far away. Probably need to get my camera closer down there. I have too much space between my table and the camera, but I'll work on it. I am a work in progress. Oh my goodness gracious. I swear I know how to thread a needle. There we go. So now, that was 36.87, by the way, that darker pink. Now I have 33.28, and we're gonna use that for some satin stitch. Let's see, I have that in here somewhere. It's pretty easy. I used to hate satin stitch. I thought that it was for machines. Like, what's the point, right? Like, a machine's always going to be able to do it better than me. Why would I bother? Then I started practicing it, and now I like it. I don't mind it so much. So, for this heart, we're actually going to outline the heart first. Let's outline it in split stitch. I was going to say satin, or not satin, I'm sorry. I was going to say backstitch, but see, you kind of get these bumps. But with the split stitch, it's kind of more even. So we'll have more of an even outline. Okay, so I'm going to outline it because it's going to make the shape a little sharper. I'm not sure if that's the right word. More defined. So when I do like eyes on animals, I like to do them like this. You can just go ahead and do satin stitch without an outline, which we'll do down here for the leaves. But for this one, I wanted to show an outline. And we may put some stitches inside as well. What have I done? What is going on? Oh my heavens. Oh no. What the heck? I don't even know what this kind of knot is, but something awful has happened. Oh my goodness. Well, this is real life, folks. Let me cut this out and I'll be back. Oh my goodness, that was a disaster. There was a lot of cutting to do. Okay, I cut out that knot. I have not seen a knot like that before. I'm not really sure what was happening there. But, you know, don't do that. I finished my outline. It's not pretty, but we're going to cover it up. And I added a couple stitches on the inside here. Just random whatever stitches. We're just going to cover this, so it doesn't matter what it looks like. Okay, so let's do some satin stitch. So I like to start in the middle of my shape. And we're going to do them vertical. Woo, I needed an extra cup of coffee this morning. So you can see I have the lines indicating what direction to go. Really doesn't matter. But we're going to do vertical. So I'm starting in the middle. You're just going to go back and forth. It uses a lot of thread. And it's all about the tension and your patience level. So that's all I can say about this, really. And just like with all of the stitches, it's practice, you know. I do a lot of yoga, and it's the same thing. It's like you don't just walk in the room and know how to do everything. Practice, practice, practice. I stitch for hours every day, okay? So if you do that, then your stitches will look like this too. Hooray! And you might be a little crazy like me, which is cool. We'll be in a club. Crazy Stitchers Club. Okay. So just up and down. Single little stitches there to make our shape. You can see it's like nice and padded. It's cool. Feels good. And if you look at the back, you can see it's like also satin stitch on the back, right? All right, now jump over to the other side. Looks so shiny. There's something called what is it called? A laying tool that can help you with this. I don't use it, but it helps kind of smooth these threads out before you pull through. If your strand is twisted, you're going to see that in your satin stitch. So you don't want any twisting. You know, if you have a piece of thread that you've had to take out because there was a tangle or something, it might not work well for satin stitch. You might need just a fresh piece of floss that doesn't have any warping in it yet. And one thing I was going to mention is there's a product called Thread Heaven, which I'm not using, and I don't use it unless I'm working on like a marathon project, because it's just one more thing to have to remember, and I'm lazy about stuff like that. But it basically acts like a conditioner for your threads, like a wax almost, and it helps with the drag, makes it easier to stitch. It feels a lot smoother when you're stitching with it. But you know, for every piece of thread you have to apply it, so it's an extra step. And like I said, I'm kind of lazy about stuff like that, so I don't always use it. But it helps prevent those knots that you saw. Okay, it's so cute. Okay, let's move on. We're going to do some more satin stitch. From someone who used to avoid it at all costs, I sure do a lot of it now. I guess that's just true of life, right? What is that called? Contempt prior to investigation. Basically, keep an open mind is what I'm saying. What have I done? Okay. Are we on here? Oh my goodness. So like I was saying, like if you're doing satin stitch with a thread that looks like that, it's going to be ugly, you know? So I got to make sure my thread, what have I done? My thread's nice and smooth on here before I get going. That's just a result of how I got my thread on my needle. I should have, if you use your sharp little scissors and snip it, it's going to be easier to get on there, and you're not going to have like that one of the 6 threads that, you know, isn't participating. Okay. And also this piece of thread I'm using, it's probably too long. I don't even need that much. Famous last words. Watch, I'm going to get a bunch of tangles. Okay, so now we're going to do more satin stitch. We're going to have it on the bottom part of this leaf. So this shape right here. So I'm going to start at the tip. Let's see, I've got a friend here. I don't know where that came from. Okay. Start at the top and go down to the vein, the middle vein line of the leaf. This is just more, so you can kind of see how it's twisted. This one's not going to be perfect. If I was like super pro, I'd take it out and grab myself another piece of floss, but it'll be cool. I don't think anyone's going to judge. So I'm just doing more satin stitch. This time we just didn't do the padding or the outline, and it's kind of a more complicated shape, I would say, just because you have to, you know, make sure you follow that outline. And you want this vein line that we're creating, we want to make sure that's really sharp, right? And you'll notice that when I've been doing all these stitches, I make sure I'm covering up that pen guideline that we did at the beginning. We don't want that peeking out. Okay. We're just going to go all the way down to the base. And one thing I didn't mention is that really the order that we do this doesn't really matter. The rose here is like the puffiest of the stitches that we're going to be doing, and it can get snagged. So I like to leave it for the end, because it's really hard to fix if you snag it. Kind of have to start over. So you can either be super careful or save it for the end. So I think we're gonna save it for the almost end. Okay. So I think off camera I'll finish the other half of this leaf, assuming you know what that's going to look like. I'm just going to use the lighter green. This is 3815 I'm using here, and then The lighter green is, what is it? 368. It's going to be on the other half of this leaf. So you can see I'm overlapping my circle down here a little bit, which is fine. It's just going to get covered with the rose. So, all right. And then I will tack this down. And I'm going to do the other side, and then when I get back, we'll do the fishbone stitch. My favorite.